Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is May 23rd, 2025, and we're starting off by looking at Bitcoin here on the weekly. Now, I have been looking at altcoins every once in a while in these videos, but I am going to keep them pretty Bitcoin centric, and we're going to break altcoin content out into live streams like the one that I had earlier today. Where I took requests live. Had quite a few people in there. Thank you for showing up and hanging out with me and going through the charts with me. But took some requests and covered some of the majors, covered some of the smaller altcoins, and even a few memes here and there. And yeah, we'll just kind of feel this out as things kind of go forward. And we're going to keep these recorded videos as Bitcoin content. And of course, where Bitcoin goes, in general, the rest of the crypto market will go. And I want to point out that since we last spoke, we have seen Bitcoin make a new all-time high, hitting our target between the 110 and 112 region. In fact, Bitcoin directly putting a high in at $112,000. So we talked quite a bit about this on Monday and Wednesday. And now we have seen it come to fruition. Now above 112, I've mentioned, kind of 115, kind of the other area between like 112 and 115 for price to fall. And it can fall anywhere within that area, just like the 110 to 112. Bitcoin plays pretty clean with the whole numbers. So 112 was not an outlandish call on the top side of this. And it did just happen to put in a high there on some lower term timeframes. We'll see if that turns into a daily high. I believe it did. Above that 112 region by the upper second standard deviation here on the weekly, you can see that we have the upper third right around $120,000. I expect if Bitcoin closes anywhere above the upper first this week, which is at about $102,000, with the weekly candle green still. By Sunday, if we close above there, I expect the upper third to be somewhere right around $120,000 to $122,000. I'm going to show you some confluences that line up with those overhead targets. Obviously, I've talked quite a bit about the $128,000 to $130,000 level. We'll take a look at that as well. But in this case, fair game on the weekly. Even if you see daily starting to trade back above 112, I would still look 112 to 115, but fair game up to 100 to 122 is likely in the making here. Now, for the weekly, what I would like to see for the bulls here is a close above the 109, 358.01 swing high, or the prior all-time high. Now, Bitcoin is currently trading below there at 107,370. I'd like to see that for continuation to keep testing the 112 region and higher. If we do see a close inside of the high here at that 109,358, doesn't mean that things are destined to go down, but it would start to look like we're going to get a little bit of a local correction, and we have to keep eyes on this next weekly candle. And that's going to be the final week of May. So in this case, from right here, that's what I'd want to see for this current open weekly candle. Now, if we do see this reverse by Sunday and start to close below the 104 region, keep a very close eye on 100,700, because that would put in a high if we start seeing weeklies close under there, whether it be this week or next week's candle. So I will be talking about this 100,703 quite a bit, and likely this week's low at 102,105. So just something to pay attention to, kind of no matter where price closes, but especially if you start seeing, the Sunday candle start to get close to this 104, 137 region. It's possible that it could start to look like this is going to turn into a major high. And then we have to start watching the 100,703 level. If this candle remains green, whether it closes above 109,358 or not, we have to then watch this week's low at 102, 105. So that's going to be kind of the criteria that I'm going to be looking at for a potential high. Otherwise, it's continuation to keep testing the highs. More likely to continue to test the new all-time high at 112. Weekly closes above that 109,360 region. Again, I've been saying this over and over again. This was a downtrend. This is the trend break. The real setup is going to occur, in my opinion, on the next higher low equal low swing. That is your trend reversal setup. I know I've said this a lot, so please bear with me. I really want to hammer this point home because I think it's very important. We had the downtrend, right? And we had the lower high. We had the lower low. Now we have the higher high. We look for the higher low and it doesn't matter where the higher low comes in. I'm just drawing it for example's sake. It could come all the way down here, and that would be a wild ride down. But point being is you look for the higher low trend reversal setup. Once that higher low sets up or equal low sets up, then that is your trend reversal setup. Your trend reversal confirmation would be back above this high, whether it's here or higher. So it would be back above the higher high because then you have higher highs, higher low, equal low structure. Then you look for the trend reversal confirmation above that higher high. So that is the play, whether it's even local here on a swing or it comes back down and hits like the mid to low 90s, maybe test the bottom side of this range to reconfirm it on a weekly level by the basis. Even better if it's in the strong half of the basis bands here. But I want to note a few things here. As long as Bitcoin is trading and closing weeklies above the upper first at that $101,900 or $102,000 level, it's likely going to update slightly above 102 by Sunday if the candle closes anything like this. Understand that this is still a move in progress at that point. We still have volatility expansion to the upside, which extends the upper second standard deviation of the Bollinger Band set here, which currently is at around 110,620 right now. So that's likely going to be somewhere around the 112 region on this next tick, especially if we see closes above the upper first standard deviation. This is kind of the volatility zone of interest right now. Above that 110 to 112, then we're looking at the volatility levels on shorter term timeframes on the daily, but in the context of the weekly up to the 120, 122 level. Let's go ahead and take a look at a few confluent things. I want to note a few things here. So I'm going to, for those of you that ascribe to various schools of technical analysis or various methodologies, understand that I'm not going to be using these in the same way. If you understand the basics of trend, support and resistance, volatility, and momentum, they're built into every system. And then every system utilizes Fibonacci extensions and fibs and trend fibs in a very different way. The way that I'm going to be utilizing this right now is on a trend fib basis from consolidation to expansion. So what I'm going to be measuring here is the consolidation off of the macro low on the weekly time frame to the expansion here up to that 73,835 all-time high there. And I want to pull this, and you could take the full expansion, you could take the full compression, or you could take the move from expansion into compression, wherever the low of that compression is, or you can take the higher low if you like. But in this case, we'll just kind of pull a fib here. And I want you to note, we talked a little bit about this trend fib. So from compression to volatility expansion, back into compression, when we got the continuation above the 73,835, we went up and we hit the 702. The next big level above the 702 is at 105,650. Yes, of course, we got swings above it. We retraced down nearly perfectly, hitting that 382. Well, the low's actually at 74,420.69, which is hilarious. But also it's right around that 382 of the fib extension. And you'll note that on this particular move, we have just above that 702, we have the 786 right around the 115 to $116,000 there at 115,809. Now, I want you to note that this is also where the daily upper third standard deviation is coming in. You see that we're even getting on yesterday's close and this higher high that is now locked in for the Friday candle. Of course, the Saturday session is open. We're seeing compression again, but in the context of being in the bullish half of the bands, this is still keeps these upside band levels as primary overhead targets. So 112 to that 115 to 116. So again, above 112, I'm looking 112 to 115. Can swings come into 116? Sure. They can even go higher. I also want to note that we have an 888 level at 129,500, which is one of the levels that I've called out before, about $128,000 to $130,000. Let's go ahead and actually see if we can't find some confluence off of this most recent compression to expansion. So pulling a trend fib from this, we have this compression, right, to expansion, and then we have this compression to expansion. So if we take the low of this compression to the expansion highs, we can get some areas of interest and see if they line up with anything. And it's all about confluence when I'm doing this. And we can see that, yes, we just ran into a 50% fib on a trend fib extension level. And we see the 618 is right here at that $122,000. And I expect this next tick on the weekly to have the upper third right around that 618 by that $122,000, giving us a zone of interest between 120 and 122. And then we have, of course, the 702 up there, which is at $130,000. This is confluent with our macro fib levels of interest. Of course, I've shown this a few times now. This is on a regular log fib from the prior cycle high to low. And we see that the 1414 is right there at $128,000. And I've been saying 128 to 130 repeatedly. We can even see that if we were gonna take this particular level here, and we pull the high to the last higher low, that we have that 1414 confluent with the macro 1414 at $128,000 up here. So we're getting zones of interest, especially in blue skies. I do like to rely on fibs, and where those fibs kind of have confluence with our volatility levels of interest. I also want to note here on the monthly that we did just spike that upper second standard deviation. Closing above 112 on the monthly would kick off expansion again. You'll see that on the structure here we had compression on the mean reversion, and as we were going into our bull market, we had compression, and then we got expansion well in the bull market to create a new all-time high. And then on these pullbacks, we've gone back into a compression. This is a very, very different price action than many were expecting. We've been tracking this for a long time. If this begins to break out above the upper second standard deviation, which is kind of governing, upper second kind of governing since we kind of created the new all-time high, upper second, upper third zone has been kind of governing price action. But if we get close over close price action above that upper second, this is back into expansion mode, man. And that's going to surprise a lot of people, I think, if that does happen. Now, of course, we still need to be aware of this last higher low at 74,420.69. And I'm going to say the full number every damn time. The monthly, as next week is going to be the last week of the month, we do need to know where the basis band is and where it's likely going to go. It's right around 69.9. Likely going to be about $70,000, putting it, at or above the basis band here. Next tick, I expect to see it above the 73,835 and starting to dig into somewhere around there and the $75,000 area, somewhere in the swings here. Now, I could, even now, what did we appreciate from here? We went from about 66 to 69. Nice. It could even, I would say probably around that the highs here to maybe $75,000, maybe starting to get into the low here or the upper 70s. We'll see on the next tick, but that is kind of governing bias on the monthly for being in the strong half of the bands, which might lead to Bitcoin, starting to take off from here. We'll see. Now you'll notice I'm not talking too much about the daily. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the daily. I think it's pretty simple, right? We got the 110 to 112 area already. We know about 112 to 115 as kind of the next zone of interest for me, which swings up to $116,000 on the board as it stands right now. And of course, we'll update this day over day. But the zones of interest right now, you'll see that I've updated the green zone now that we've passed the all-time high to be the close to the actual highs here as the zone of interest. So, we're right in the thick of it here, 106 to essentially 109,360, right? And anywhere below there, I'd be looking 106 to where the basis band is coming in at 104. If we do start to see that area dropped, be aware of the last higher low structure on a swing at around that 102.1. But the zone is, really going to be around that 101, $100,000 area to 104 here. If you start to see 100,700 break down, well, we're looking probably for a pretty quick trip to go test 98 to 95, somewhere around the point of control where we see the lower second standard deviation is coming in around that $96,000. So, that would be a legit full-on correction on the daily that would break structure, right? Because last high or low, depending on time frame, is going to be around this 100,700, of course. If you're looking at the daily swings, Bitcoin essentially can hang out in this area if it does start to break below 106 and 104 here by the basis and go into the bearish half. We'll likely see the lower first somewhere around that area. It's right around $100,000, and I would give price the ability to move safely down to $100,000 if we don't see any closes below 100,700 and we just swing into it. That'd be fine. And especially on any reclaim of $101,000. But if we do start to see 100,700 break down, we could be looking at not just a structural change, but a possible trend reversal setup on the daily that could lead to tests further down. As it stands right now, can't fade the trend. It is an uptrend. It's in some really important areas. We've gotten some strong bids. Everybody's going, oh my God, it's all the tariff stuff that's the reason why the market pulled back. I'd like to point out that traditional markets, we actually saw the high come in on Tuesday and confirm on Wednesday, well before tariff news started to drop, and that was in S&P. We saw the same thing, Wednesday confirmation of the high in NASDAQ, and of course this is futures, and obviously we saw the same thing on Dow. So, it's not really news driven. This is trader driven and profit driven. And, there's hedges being set up in very important zones across the board. And Bitcoin literally just made a new all-time high. If you want to know who was selling, we can take a look at miner net flows here. So before the breakout, we saw a lot of inflow and into miners and then net flow outs. So on this actual new higher high. And this is movement of outflows is selling in almost all cases. And you see that miner reserves have gone down for Bitcoin. So selling into the move, taking some profits for operations and stuff like that. OTC, so on and so forth, OTC fulfillments and all that kind of stuff as well. So when looking at exchange reserves, you'll see that exchange reserves went flat and then started to curl up a little bit here. So, in the past couple of days, it slowed down its aggressive outflows from exchanges. So, it's pretty normal stuff. There's nothing wrong with this move. It's not unhealthy. And it's still a trend break. So be prepared. Now I did say in the stream earlier, I'll try to keep this, 10 to 15 minutes. My apologies for going 20. But I think that there's a lot of important information in my head that I want to get out there to all of you. And you let me know if you find it valuable. Keep looking and thinking volume. But yeah, you let me know if you find it valuable. I will be back talking at you all again on Monday. And, I appreciate you all for hanging out with me earlier. For those that did in the live stream, if you missed it, go ahead and watch it. It's on the timeline there. And yeah, you have a wonderful weekend. And of course, as always, a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.